Welcome to episode 1 of Bespoke Endurance. I'm Greg. This is alongside always Josh, and we are two what we would call recreational cyclists who are on this journey to become racers. Racing is in cycling a very fluid term. We are in no way claiming to become amazing, but we are definitely wanting to get out of the recreational weekend warrior category and to get into training and racing and get very serious about that.
Yep.
The caveat to that is we are regular dudes. So much cycling content that's out there is really based around what are professionals doing, what are the guys in the tour doing, what kind of numbers are they putting up, what kind of hours are they putting in their training, and that will never be us. We are both have full-time jobs. We both are husbands. We have families, very young kids. Life is really busy.
Life is very busy.
And so what we want to do with this channel is go from a recreational rider to a racer, but in the parameters of what 90% of the people who are on watching us will probably relate to, that we are not pros, we are not able to train like pros, and personally I'm okay with that, because as much as I love riding my bike, I don't know if I would want to ride it for 30 plus hours a week.
Maybe in Europe.
Maybe for like 1 week, but not like for my entire life. So that's kind of the journey we're on. If that interests you, then you are in the right place. So we hope that you kind of follow along with our journey. We'll be putting out content along with this weekly podcast. We do want to take a quick moment to give a huge shout out to Road ID. So we are both rocking our Road IDs right now.
Let's go.
You just got yours recently.
Yes.
And you've got the like adjustable band.
Correct. I've got the Sport Edition, and honestly, I haven't taken this thing off. It's amazing. I love this. It's so comfortable. And to me, that was one of the biggest things of this is, will I actually wear this thing? And the answer is yes. And it feels like half the time I'm not even wearing it, and that's amazing because it's just like my Garmin watch. What I love so much about that thing is just like it's just so comfortable. So with the Road ID, it's like it's amazing. Yeah, I love it. I love the feel.
Maybe I need to upgrade because I don't have the awesome band. I have mine's like 9 years old, so I've got the. It's kind of like the.
Still looks good.
Thank you. Green is my favorite color. Mine's like the old, kind of those old Livestrong bracelets from the early 2000s. It's kind of what it reminds me of. But what I want to mention, so you just got yours a few weeks ago. I've had mine for about 9 years, and the engraving on it is still flawless.
Yeah.
I've never had to replace the plate with my information on it. There's a couple scratches from where I've hit it on things, but nothing as far as no wearing off. I've sweat in this outside in the rain, all the elements, the snow.
Yeah.
And I've never had to
Extreme
replace.
durability.
Yeah, it's been super durable. And what I love about the Road ID is I think a lot of people get into this misconception of, well, my Garmin or Wahoo has a crash detection, or like I have a specialized helmet. It's got that Angie sensor that does the crash detection. And those are awesome. They call people. They tell you, hey, such and such got in an accident. Here's the coordinates. We're calling 911. That's great. And I'm not knocking those. But what those things don't do is that the Road ID can do is if you have any pre-existing medical conditions, if you have a certain type of diabetes or a certain blood type or something that a first responder would need access to immediately, you can put that information on here. The other thing it does is, yes, those devices notify someone that there's an accident somewhere, but they don't have the live updates. So, mine, I've got like my family phone numbers of who to call, some allergies, things like that. And if something were to happen, a first responder can get this and call my wife and go, oh, hey, we've got your husband. He's okay. We're taking him to this location. We'll be there in 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that, to me, it's like wearing a seatbelt. It's like, why wouldn't you put a seatbelt on your car?
Yeah.
So massive shout out to Road ID. Super glad they're letting us film at their headquarters. It's awesome.
Yes.
We're
it's an amazing headquarters too.
Yeah, this place is awesome. It's also like super conveniently like 10, 15 minutes from where we live. So it's really
perfect.
Works out in that sense for us too.
Yeah, huge shout out to Edward and the team. We're very, very grateful that they're hosting us here to be able to record this. I'm so excited about this. So week one. So I want to just mention real quick, normally how this format's going to work for the podcast is it's going to be broken up into 3 parts. So one is we're going to discuss our training that particular week. 2 is we're going to discuss a key topic like VO2 max, fat max, nutrition, etc. And then the third part is, as this grows, we want engagement for you guys. So we would love to do Q&A. And particularly as we bring on guests, that's going to be also something that we want you guys to be able to have that interaction with them to where you can ask them questions and they can be able to respond as well. So we're hopeful as this grows, you guys continue or will engage in that capacity with us, because I think that would be a really fun part of the show is just hearing from other people, other guys and gals that are on their own journeys. Maybe they're like us, maybe they're recreational, maybe they want to start getting into racing, or maybe they're just on that cusp of trying to get into cycling, and they're just trying to figure out what should I do? What does that training look like? So would love to hear from you guys. But for these first 2 episodes, we're going to really we wanted to introduce ourselves. We wanted to have you guys get to know us a little bit, just hear a little bit of our story. And so this week, we got Greg, and man, just tell me from the beginning, like how and when did your cycling journey begin?
So for me, cycling began 9 years ago. Growing up, I was never really big into the traditional American sports, baseball, football, basketball. I was not good at any of those. I did baseball 1 year and I enjoyed it, but I started way too late.
Yeah.
So in 3rd grade at a local high school, they had elementary races. And so every Friday after school, I started finding these and going to that. And then I would just kind of do very minimal workouts with the high school team because they didn't have an elementary or middle school program. So I would just kind of show up, do a warm-up and stretch with them, and then go home and then go to these Friday races. But once I got into 4th grade, I was able to join the team. And what I loved about cross-country running back then for me was I was the only kid doing it until high school was when my friends started really getting into it more. So it was very much like my own thing. Kids had the conventional sports and they had that, and I really liked that I had kind of my own thing that I could really enjoy, that I enjoyed the endurance aspect of running.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Did anybody else in your family, were they runners?
No. My dad, he was I don't want to say heavier guy growing up, but he has really good hand-eye coordination. So he did basketball. He did cross country, but he was like his coach made him do cross country to stay fit for basketball. That wasn't his focus. Whereas for me, I did cross country, and then I would do indoor track and outdoor track as a way to stay in shape for cross country. So by the time I got to high school, we were training 11 out of the 12 months a year. We would only take a 2-week block off between sports and another 2-week block between outdoor track and cross country just to have a reset. But we were pretty much training year round. Yeah. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the training aspect, the competing aspect. But track was okay.
What did you like better? Did you enjoy track more, or were you more, no, cross country is my thing, track is just a way to keep in shape?
Yeah, so cross country was my jam. I loved it. I loved it. I loved being out on the road. I loved being in the woods, on undulating, I think that's the right word, just terrain, whereas a track was very boring to run. Now, when I started coaching in college, it flipped. I loved coaching track. Okay. Super easy spectating sport. Yeah. They're all right there. Cross country is right there. They run by and then it's like, okay, they're gone now. But no, I loved running cross country, doing the races. Track was just a means to stay in shape. It was just every race and track or every practice was just a way to really focus on getting better for the next season of cross country. Yeah.
So maybe enjoyed track, but you really loved cross country.
Yes.
Love it. Okay. Now, is that when did you enjoy you mentioned it, but did you tell me a little bit about did you fall in love with competing? Tell me how you would feel before a race, during the race, et cetera. Is that when your competitive side would naturally come out?
Yeah, so I had this weird love-hate relationship with competing. I would get so nervous in the build-up, especially the night before and the day of, to where I wouldn't want to race.
Yep.
But once the gun shot off and I was 100 meters into whatever race I was doing, then I felt totally relaxed, in my element, and psychologically ready to go. But the build-up period I hated. And I would get that way with like interval workouts too. I still get like that, even with riding. We have a big around here Tuesday Night Worlds, and it's a pretty big. It can be
a fast group ride,
race pace. And when I show up to that, and we're waiting in the parking lot, I'm just sitting there like, I just want to start. Like, just get us on the road.
Yeah.
And I hate that
feeling before.
But once we're going, it's great. And running was the same. Once I was racing or once I was in the interval, I was fine, and I enjoyed that. I think a lot of people, they do a race and they look back and like, oh, I hated that, or that was horrible, or what a bad experience. I had some of those, but like more often it was a very like, oh, that was fun. Like I enjoyed that experience and that competition, and and we had a really good team. We had a really good coaches.
So tell me about your times. What were your fastest times when you were a runner?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say this right now. I would classify myself. I was a good runner. I was not a great runner.
Yep.
So to me, and people might rip this apart, or like old coaches or teammates, but I was so in the 5K I was low 17s. 17:11 was the best I got to. I think that's good. I don't think that's great by any stretch. That was my junior year. My senior year, I had a lot of knee issues, and I was out most of the season. I think if I'd have been fully healthy my senior year, I think I'd have been like a 16:40 runner. Just kind of looking at the progression I was making year to year, I think I'd have been 16:40, 16:50 range, and I'd have been very pleased with that. I would have looked back on like my time and been like, yeah, I finished out really good. The mile I was terrible at. I was like a 450, like I was not good, and the 800, like a 207 in a relay.
Okay.
We had a lot of guys on our team who were really fast at the mid distance stuff, and we had really good coaches who they didn't play favorites. The nice thing about track and cross country is our coaches constantly said the clock is the judge, the clock doesn't lie.
Yeah.
In track, your top 2 guys run in each event. Unless it's a relay, then it's 4. And in cross country, it takes 5 to score, and then 7, like your 6 and 7 runners are like backups in case there's a tie or a runner dies or something like in the middle of the race. I don't know. Like something happens where you need
something tragic.
That guy's there to step in.
You're in, Jimmy.
And
Get in there.
Like our coaches did a really good job of fostering a healthy competition among the team, where at the end of the day, we're teammates, we're friends, like we did everything together, but we would, I want to be that in that top 5 or top 7 in cross, or you want to be that top 1 or top 2 guy or that relay guy. So they would race us against each other all the time, and as a way to just kind of get constant competition
invoking that natural competitiveness that you need in a race. So that makes sense.
And running is super interesting, and I'm kind of excited to get into this with cycling too, with racing, because I think that running, even if you're competing against people, at the end of the day, you're always competing against yourself.
Yeah.
It is always a battle of the mind. Our coaches would always say something along the lines of your legs and your head are going to say no, but your heart is going to say like go. Your heart is like, who's got the biggest heart? And I loved that. I think that cycling has a bit of that. Just any endurance sport, really, like swimming, triathlons, like you're ultimately racing against yourself. And even who's that guy that broke 2 in the marathon? Was that Kipchoge?
Kipchoge, I think. Yeah, he was the first to do it.
The Ineos guy or whatever. Yeah, so even he is the fastest marathoner on the planet, and he's still competing against himself. Yeah. Like he's like, okay, how can I shave off? How can I marginally get better to shave off more time? So it's like, even if you're the best, you're still trying to beat a version of yourself. Yeah. And so I love that.
Yeah. Dude, I do too. So tell me, how did you get into cycling? How did you fall in love with it? How did you go from a runner to a cyclist?
So for me, it was, I didn't run in college, but I started coaching. I went back to my old high school, and I coached there for a year. And then my wife and I, we were volunteer leaders with this organization called Young Life. And so I started coaching at the school that we were doing Young Life at. I was coaching track and cross country, and I was always, because my coaches were like this. They weren't the coaches that would sit back at the school, say go run 5 miles, and I'll see you in 40 minutes or whatever. They would go out and run with us.
Run with you.
And I always respected that
Yep.
they were out there running with us. And so that was the kind of coach I wanted to be. I wanted to be doing the workouts. I wanted to know how it felt.
Yep.
So that I could say, okay, yes, it is physically stupid for you to do another interval because I can feel like your body's giving, I know what this feels like. But that knee injury that I mentioned my senior year, it just kind of followed me into college. Basically, long story short, I'm super unflexible, and that gives me knee issues. That's like the quickest way to say it.
Got it.
And so I got to a point in life where I was really unhappy with discipline in my life. Physically, there was like a for me like a personal, like a spiritual funk I was in, and I was wanting to find something to get physically back in shape. But I knew that running, like my days of running were kind of over.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of gotten, I don't hate running now, but I don't miss it. I don't miss running. I don't know how to say that any better.
Yeah, that
but
makes sense. Yeah,
but I still have a lot of friends that are runners, and,
right.
and I still appreciate the sport. And I teach at a high school, and I constantly talk to the track and cross country kids, like, oh, what are you guys training? What are you doing? I love the sport. I just don't miss
the actual
participating
running.
in it. Yeah,
makes sense.
And so, I think this was like 10, 11 years ago. My friend was getting into mountain biking, and he took me mountain biking twice. And both times it was the worst experience of my life. Like, he got me on this.
That's not what started your love of cycling.
This is the love of cycling. So he got me on, like, it was like a Walmart mountain bike.
Okay.
And it was, the seat tube was so rusted that the saddle was so low, like your knees are coming up, and I couldn't get a comfortable position.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was cool, but it wasn't.
Sounds painful.
It wasn't fun. And so that year, I kept telling my wife, like, I want to get a more disciplined life. I want to have something that I'm testing myself and pushing. And so that Memorial Day, she surprised me. She took me to a bike shop up in Cincinnati, and they were running this massive Memorial Day sale, and she was like, get a bike. Just get a bike. She did it with our tax return money. And she's like, just get a bike. And so I tested a couple things. I tried a mountain bike. I tried a hybrid, and I tried a road. And I called my buddy, and I'm like, I'm looking at this hybrid, and he's like, that's fine, but you're not going to do one thing good on a hybrid. You're just going to do stuff mediocre. He's like, you're going to suck on the trails. You're going to be slow on the road. So just pick what you want to do. And what really sold me on road biking was, like, mountain biking, you always have to, unless you live at a park, you have to load the bike up. You got to buy a rack. You got to drive somewhere. If it's poured down rain, the trails are usually slop. You can't get out on them.
Very muddy.
And whereas road biking, very similar to cross country running, you just walk out your steps and you go. So you open the garage, you hop on the bike, and you just start pedaling. Yep. And I love that. And what I came to discover, being a mid-distance runner, if this is your radius, you run 6 miles, maybe 3 miles out, 3 miles back, or some loop that you do, you get on a road bike, and your radius, it's massive. It's massive. I remember I grew up in northern Kentucky, so right across from Cincinnati, and you run on the sidewalks, you learn all the back streets. Yeah. But then you get into cycling, it's like you learn all the country roads. Yes. And I'll look at my Strava when I first started, and be like, oh my gosh, like I went all the way to Rabbit Hash. I'm in Cincinnati, like the coolest places. Yep. And I love that. That's one of the things I really love about riding compared to running, is just you see so much more stuff.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, so now that you've ridden your bike for many years, like, what do you love about it most today?
Yeah, so I would say there's two things. So this is year 9. The first few years I'm a teacher, so I was only riding in the summer. Okay. And it was a means to get in shape. And then I really started hating getting out of shape.
Yeah.
and getting back into shape. So I think around 2019, I started saying to myself, I really want to I want to do this year round.
Yeah.
And then I had a run-in 2020 with a car. I want to scare away our listeners, but like it happened. Like
Yeah,
I got
it happens.
T-boned by a car.
Yep.
Met a really awesome guy who's an attorney who also rides, and he helped me kind of walk through the insurance claim process. He started coaching me, and through the insurance claim process, I was able to buy a new bike, and I started to think, man, I got a really nice bike, so I want to get really fit for the bike. I know that sounds dumb, but I was like, I don't want to be
not to me.
Like if you're out of shape. So if you are really out of shape, you're really not going to be able to hop on a bike and tell the difference between a Pinarello Dogma and a low-end entry-level. If you're out of shape, your lungs hurt, your legs hurt, and 20 minutes in, you're gasping for air. But when you're in really good shape, you can start appreciating the nuances of different rides, of different types of bikes. And so I got into training in year-round, and I'd say 2020, wanting to just start making that my main thing. What I love about cycling from a professional level, and this is what I try to tell people and explain to people. So I always describe professional cycling as, let's take two very opposite sports. Let's say cross-country runners or marathoners, and let's say a NASCAR driver, right? So a cross-country runner, the only piece of tech, excuse me, the only piece of tech that they really care about is their shoe. Everything else for them is physiological. It's their training, it's their diet, it's how can they get their body in a peak performance level, right? Then you have an opposite sport, like let's say NASCAR. Now, obviously, they're not going to put an obese guy in a NASCAR, but like,
tough to get in the car.
Right. Like, I'm going to bet, as great as Jeff Gordon was, I don't think he was a super athlete like a Michael Jordan or a Tom Brady, or like, I don't think he was athletic as some of those guys. Whereas NASCAR is all about the tech, the car, the tires, the aerodynamics, how can we push this machine to the highest level of performance to get the best marginal gain. And what I love about cycling, to me, it's this perfect marriage of those two ideas. When you look at these guys in the tour or competing in World Tour races, they are the most fit people on the planet. They're burning 10,000 calories a day in the tour. They have marginally trained high altitude. They are doing everything they can to be in perfect human peak condition, and they're on these $15,000 to $20,000 state-of-the-art R&D to the nth degree bikes that are worth thousands of dollars, that are aero tested, weight tested, compliant tested, and I love that. I love that it's a physiological thing on this high-tech equipment. I think that's awesome. Someone out there's like, well, just watch Formula One, but Formula One isn't as cool to me. Sorry.
It's not as cool to us, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So who would you say is your biggest inspiration now in cycling? From a pro level, from an elite level, like who would you say your biggest inspiration is today?
So I kind of look at that two ways. From like a personal, like what motivates me to get out the door, I don't look at a professional and go, oh man, they're amazing. I want to go be amazing now. Like when I follow people on Strava and see them riding, that motivates me. Or if I get any piece of new clothing or equipment or something, that keeps me like, oh, I can't wait to really test this out. But as far as watching pros, I love watching the Tour. I love watching Tade.
Yeah, of course.
Slay. Everything he does, it's really fun. I feel like when I first got into cycling, everybody that I would read about was kind of at the tail end of their career. So I would read all these things about Chris Froome, and then when I started really watching, he gets hurt. I would read all these articles about Peter Sagan, and then he started to get really old. I'm like, is there anybody that's really awesome? And now I feel like that I really watch the sport. It's this next generation of guys coming in, and that's what makes it really fun. Remco, Jonas, Van der Poel, wow, like all these guys, I feel like, oh, this is a fun time to be a fan. Even though I'm just getting into it the past couple years, it's like I'm riding out this really awesome fresh wave versus like I'll talk to guys and they'll be like, oh, Chris Froome. And I'll be like,
Yeah,
I'm sure he was great in the mid 2000s, but like that's, he hasn't performed like he was.
Sure.
And he's not the guy that I'm watching going, oh, this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. All right. Last question I have for you.
Yeah.
So what has been your favorite event or race that you've done so far on the bike?
I would say, I think, so I started doing like a lot of century rides with people, kind of like in Kentucky, we have this thing called the Kentucky Century Challenge. It's 5 century rides over a few months, and that's fun. I started to want something more competitive. Those you just kind of show up and ride. I wanted something more competitive, so I've done a couple things. What I have found my favorite is not as much a specific race, but more of an experience with people. I'm very much an extrovert, and I love to do shared experiences with people.
Yeah.
So last year I did an event that I'm training for again this year. You're going to do it. It's going to be amazing. We're doing the Chair Hollow Challenge.
Let's go.
Super excited about that. But then on the flip side, like last year I did this event in Indiana, and it was an awesome event, but I went by myself, and it just fell flat. And even this year, I'm like, I might do it, but I was like, if I can't find anyone to do it, like I'm just like, I'm probably not going to go. So for me, it's that shared experience of going to an event, a race, a fondo with someone and competing, and then having that discussion of, oh, how did you do? How did you feel? Oh, you climbed up this at this power. That's awesome. I was here. Like that's, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it does. So Chair Hollow was the event for you. Yeah,
Chair Hollow was it last year. And then even we go to Gatlinburg every year, and there's some really fun climbing down there in the Smokies. I always do.
Yep.
There's a fun ride up to Klingman's Dome. It's like 20 miles, and my dad gets so nervous that I'm riding in the park. He follows me in the car for like, he's just going like 12 miles per hour up a hill for 2 hours. I'm like, oh, I feel so sorry for him, but I appreciate it so much. Like,
yeah, dad can be your fuel source. You know? He could be your team car.
Yeah, well, my son, my oldest went, and so he's like handing me water and snacks out the window, and I'm like, and I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Like,
if you do it again this year, we need to get video of that because that sounds amazing. Yeah. All right, man, dude, I love that so much, man. Well, and your story's fun, and it's like I'm super pumped to be able to race with you this year. You know, as both of us level up in our cycling journey. And so again, like what we mentioned before, it's like normally we talk about the different training aspects. We dive into a very specific topic, but again, just for these first 2 weeks, we're just kind of giving you an introduction of both of us. But did want to mention for you guys, if you are on Instagram or TikTok, we are posting daily training videos on there as well. So please be sure to check us out. And then in week 3, we're actually going to be talking about our goals and the races and kind of what we have set out for the year. So pretty excited to talk about that. But yeah, man, thanks for sharing your story, dude. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, throw in there, we're not just doing just daily videos, but we're also going to be having some content videos coming out, rolling out in the next few weeks as well.
Yep.
We've potentially got a, what did we do a few weeks ago? Lactate test?
The lactate test.
Lactate test.
Yeah.
Over at UC. So made a video on that. We're going to get that rolled out here soon.
Yeah. It's fun to watch you suffer. I was hurt, but yeah. Yeah. I love it.
All right. We do want to hear from you guys, though. So please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below. Do you relate? Are you a recreational rider? Are you just getting into racing? Have you been racing? One thing I was thinking about earlier that you were saying is having guests on. I also want to have people on who are out of the phase of life that we're in and in the master's phase and looking back, and what advice do they have for people like us who are training with young kids and families, and they look at that and go, oh yeah, my kids are all, I can have all the time in the world to do whatever I want now. So what advice would they have for us? So we'd love to hear about that. We do want to do a question and answers. So starting next week, we're hoping to have audience members type things in, leave comments, and we can respond to those to give us some things to talk about. Until then, we will see you next week.
All right. See you guys.